mentioned, raised this week by two prominent conservatives in the Globe and Mail and on CBC News Network. Have a listen.
Really has nothing to do with having a personal stance, it being religious, it being social conservative issues. Equality of opportunity, equality amongst every individual is not a left and right or social conservative issue. It's where conservatives need to be today, and it's where they needed to be during the campaign.
This is the time, now that we are in a postmortem period, we're having honest conversations within the party as to how we move forward on this and correct for some of the mistakes that were made during the campaign so that we can win next time. And this is a conversation that we're proud to put our names to and have out in the public because it needs to be had.
Does the party have to evolve, or do they have to be seen to evolve? Vicky?
I mean, I think they have to evolve. This is out of my personal belief that Canada should be an advocate for human rights, and I think LGBTQ issues fall firmly within that. But I think more specifically is that the conservative consensus internationally has changed, and the question for the Conservative Party of Canada is always: do you aim towards, you know, the British and American style version of conservatism that we're seeing, or do we forge our own way forward that is still inclusive and still has a vision that includes the most number of Canadians, especially including LGBTQ Canadians? And this is been the tough spot that Andrew Scheer has been in, articulating that line. And I don't think that it's impossible to communicate either a change of heart, a change of vision, or a deeper or new understanding. You know, I famously think of Barack Obama saying that he has evolved on gay marriage and is now an advocate for LGBTQ Americans. I think there's a position to be held here while still speaking to your base and saying that there's a way forward that is more inclusive, that a person can change their mind. Andrew Scheer is not necessarily communicating that intention at the moment.
Yeah, Tasha, how should the party either move forward or communicate this issue better?
Well, in some ways, they're not just moving forward, it's moving back. Progressive conservatives were under Brian Mulroney in power for 9 years in the 80s and early 90s. And the progressive conservative vein, many people are saying that's where they need to get back, is, you know, a progressive conservative is someone who is on social issues more liberal, more, I guess, closer to the evolving consensus that Vicky referred to, but doesn't necessarily have to embrace a bigger state. That is the difference. There, you know, the red Tories tend to embrace a bigger state, the bigger role of government in people's lives. You can still be a fiscal conservative, but be socially more liberal or progressive. And I think that's where the party, if it's looking to the future to differentiate itself from the Liberals on issues like, you know, actually balancing the books and making sure that we're not, you know, appointing ministers of the middle class and other such silly things. I think that that's the direction they should go in, and I don't know if Scheer can take them there.
What does the leader, Danielle, of the Conservative Party, whoever that may be, how should he or she approach this issue?
He should come to either the Calgary or Edmonton Pride parades and maybe not go to the more flamboyant Pride parades. I think we have to recognize the LGBTQ community is not monolithic. It's not singular. There are progressives in it and there are conservatives in it. The Calgary Pride parade, it's nothing but parents with kids in strollers and T-shirts. There's no alcohol, there's no nudity. It's a very conservative support for the LGBTQ community, and I think that's different than in other parts of the country. The other thing I would say is embrace monogamy. I interviewed a gay conservative this week, Douglas Murray, and the reason he's conservative and the reason he supports gay marriage is because he believes that a two-parent family is the best home to raise a child and provide that kind of stability. It doesn't matter whether those two parents are opposite sex or whether they're same sex. I think that if the Conservatives could get back to what really matters, which is creating that kind of stable home and family environment, being pro-family, genuinely pro-family, and embracing gay Conservatives as well, I think that that's the direction they need to move.
But I think if the embrace of LGBTQ issues only works if it's an embrace of a very limited version of LGBTQ issues, I still think that's a failure on Andrew Scheer's part. I do think it will lend, you know, if nonetheless, it'll still lend them into the long-term trap, which is that younger people do care about these issues and it's central to them. And I don't know that the party convinced any young person to vote for them.
See, I would agree with Danielle, though. I think that the notion of the family is something that is very central to the conservative worldview. And the irony is, in fact, that LGBTQ activists and just average people have been fighting for the right to be recognized as families. You know, and families don't come in all in one box. They come in different forms. But the idea of forming a stable family is something that conservatives have been behind, you know, since their origins philosophically in the 1700s. So you could say that supporting the family in any form is something that's actually very consistent with being a conservative.
Yeah,
There's
whether
also
that
such a
includes
thing as
all the
I
different
was
versions
just-
of a family for the rest of the LGBTQ alphabet. You know, like trans families look different, and they're not necessarily going to form in line with a conservative vision of an
No,
LGBTQ
but it's the concept,
family.
the concept of a stable home, though, and the concept of the idea that a family is important to you. This is something. I mean, the conservatives have to hew to their values too. They cannot just abandon values and say we're going to be something completely different. But I think that everyone. I mean, you mentioned trans people as well. Trans folk want families too. I think ultimately what we want is to be loved and respected for who we are, and to form those loving relationships with other people. And that, to me, is what a family is. And I think conservatives can get behind that concept.
Susan,
But-
one
and I
last
also-
word to you.
Well, I was just going to say there's also a conservative environmentalism too, and I think
Yeah.
it was embodied by Jim Prentice and Brian Mulroney, and I don't see any sign of that within Scheer's immediate group.
Okay, we have 5 months, or maybe less, according to Danielle, to litigate this aspect, but we will be back, pausing for our discussion for a moment there. But we always want to get you involved in the debate. You can tweet me at jnorthcottcbc. Just remember to use the hashtag SundayScrum. And our panelists, of course, always up for a good discussion. They can be reached at Susan_P_Riley, at Vimo Chama, at Tasha Carradine, at AB Danielle Smith.